Morning everyone. Wow, it's quite daunting. I'm a little bit nervous, but I'm sure I'll get there. I'm Kerry. I am a mother, midwife, and now a maternity investigator, amongst other things. There are George, Abby, Ellie, and Emily, and two are at the back because I had to bring them with me anyway. Midwifery and bereavement midwifery, really. This is something that I absolutely live by. You can be all sorts as a midwife. We can teach you lots of things, but we can't teach you this. Love and compassion are absolute necessities. They're not luxuries, and they are so needed. And I think you're all sitting there thinking, well, that's completely weird, because we're all compassionate, but we're not. We are not all compassionate. Midwives, doctors, sometimes there is very, very little compassion out there. So if you take anything from my speech or anything from what I say today, this is the biggest thing. Be compassionate. Just imagine if it was you, if it was your family, and how you would like your family to be treated. And that really, for me, is I can end there. 20 minutes in advance. Yay. No, I'm kidding. I have done lots of roles because, to be fair, I wasn't really sure once I'd qualified where I really fitted in midwifery, what I really wanted to do. And I was just winging it, really. I was so excited to be qualified and delivering babies and looking after mums and making family. It was amazing. And then really I kind of stumbled into bereavement, which I didn't get any training on as a student. It wasn't discussed. I had no idea about it at all. And it wasn't until a very close friend of mine sadly had a stillbirth that it was kind of thrust into my face. She would ring me and ask me questions like, well, they've just given me some tablets and now I've got to go home for 48 hours with my dead baby inside me. Is that normal? And I was thinking, what? That can't be right. I had no clue. So realistically, that was my sort of springboard, because actually I didn't know anything about it, and I was a midwife and I was qualified. And I just thought that's totally inappropriate. So really I started looking at bereavement much more closely, because I obviously didn't know anything about it. And if I don't know anything about it, how am I meant to support families? So really I looked at sort of all the why, what, where, when, who, how does this work? And started pulling things together. So it suddenly really clicked that actually bereavement sounds really bizarre, but it was something that I could help people with. Yes, I have cried every day doing this job, but nowhere near as much as the families. And if I can help them on their hardest days, then surely that's something to be proud of. So I looked at the NHS and certainly the trusts that I was working in at the time, and felt that really there was no training. We didn't really talk about it. There was no study days, there was nothing. If it was mentioned, it was maybe a fleeting 10 minutes. And I'd been qualified for probably about 5 years at this point. And I thought, gosh, this is sadly lacking. Communication, that's with each other, that's with the families, and actually the only people I was ever going to learn from were the families that had been through this. And their voice was the most important, and their choice, or at this point from my experience, their lack of choice. So the only people that I went to were families that had lost their babies. And actually, they were so pleased to have a voice and come and have somebody listen to them and take from them what they needed, what they wanted, what would have helped. Because actually, they got very little in the NHS. Again, there's the whole compassion thing. And realistically, good bereavement care, as far as I'm concerned, puts all of those things together. So I had started doing some work on bereavement and what families needed, and then I emailed this lady and sort of said, oh, you've done bereavement, you know, this is a big thing for you, and I've been working on it, and I'm really excited with the work that we've been doing, because actually it's with the families. And really randomly, I wasn't expecting a reply, let alone an invitation to Westminster, which was super scary and very cool, by the way. And then I got to present my work to the APPG, and I was invited to join and be a midwifery advisor in creating the National Bereavement Care Pathway, which actually today is probably one of the most proudest moments of my career and for my life, really, except my own 4 children. this is huge. This will and has helped change, hopefully for the better, bereavement care. It's not prescriptive, it's not perfect, but it's certainly better than what we had out there initially. So if anyone's got any questions about that later, come find me. So when I managed to secure a bereavement midwifery role full time, this is what I kind of looked at in the service. What were the long-term goals? The trust I worked in didn't have a bereavement suite. All the mums and families were kind of shoved in with everybody else. So you'd be in one room and next door I'd be having a birth with crying babies, and it was just brutal. Training, again, we had none. Staff confidence. Staff told me, I'm not scared of providing bereavement care to families. In fact, it's really actually quite a beautiful time. But actually what I'm terrified of is paperwork and getting it all wrong and causing problems, so they shied away from it. And non-surprising to me were attitudes and behaviours. You would not believe the things that I have heard. And actually what has come out this week, where babies have been called it. I have witnessed other midwives say to a family, you can't come out here with that because it might upset somebody. Are you kidding me? That's somebody's child. That's somebody's their most treasured, beautiful, precious possession. How dare they? Actually, I didn't have to say anything because the mother leapt off the bed and lost her shit. Am I allowed to say shit? Sorry if I'm not. Sorry, Emily, don't say shit. She's 5. Oopsie. So there were things that were quick changes, quick wins, and then there were much longer term goals. The care should always be parent-centred. The choice should always be theirs. I had several parents tell me that actually not only did they lose their baby, but they lost their rights to decide how things happen, how their birth looked. They lost the right to the birth they wanted because they were just kind of instructed to do things and kind of went along with it. I've had some mums say, I didn't know if I was allowed to hold my baby. What? Because they felt they needed permission. So make sure they know. I always say to my families, this is your baby. This is your day. You do what you want. And if you're struggling with any aspect of it, give me a shout and we will help you do whatever it is you need. Our guidelines were absolutely unbelievable. Let's say there was something like 68 pages. Well, to be fair, and this may offend some people, but it's me. I'm blonde. I'm dyslexic. I don't like guidelines. I like things that are idiot-proof, blonde-proof, maybe nick-proof, but something that's easy. Because if you're in this situation, actually you are very emotional yourself, because this is not what we want to happen for anybody. So actually as a midwife, you are invested in that care and you are emotionally charged. And actually the last thing you want to do is make a mistake. So for me, it was the guidance and the information needed to be easy to read. Charity support, I know we've mentioned it, but and Chris thinks I'm stupid when I say this, but I am a biscuit, yeah? Everybody loves a biscuit, but the charities are the chocolate and the extra bits on top, because without that, I'm just a biscuit when I could be an awesome biscuit. Does that make sense? It makes perfect sense to me. But again, I am a little bit crazy. And actually, better keepsakes and memory making. You've got such a finite amount of time with that baby that actually those memories have to last an entire lifetime. So anything we can do needs to be done. So this is kind of how I rejig my pathways, and literally you work from the front of the booklet to the back of the booklet. It is absolutely all in keeping with the National Bereavement Care Pathway, and actually it is every single thing in there is parent-centred, and there are little quotes down the side about families, and it's not to teach to suck eggs, it's just to remind you what they're going through, and that families love this. Kate, I'll email it if you want. I'm happy to share anything. So this is kind of where it all started for me, and this originally was called the Grace Project, but it's had a few updates and a few changes, and it's now called the Cherish Pact. And it is little bits of information that bereaved families told me they absolutely needed things that, I'm not saying anything, but there is like SANS information, it's like this. Well, anyone who is like me does not want to read that. And certainly when they've been through such heartache, it's like getting out the dictionary. Or Emily was reading the Bible this morning. It would be like reading that. It's just very intense. So it's snapshots of information. We were in a hotel room. That kid could find a book. And it's just having creative ways of sort of making memories and things. And this is my little butterfly that kind of goes everywhere with me, bereavement related. So this is how the butterfly came about. So I was working in a trust. I've worked in several, so I shall not name any. And I was talking to families, and one mum said, is there anything we can do to stop people barging in the room and saying inappropriate things? And I was like, how can people say inappropriate things? What do you mean? Well, this lady had had twins. And she got adjoining rooms because she wanted her baby that was alive to be with her and her twin not so far away. So one doctor, oh, hi, good morning, I'm so-and-so. Oh, I thought you had twins, where's your other twin? Well, actually, she's next door because she's died, but I want her to be close, but I want to be able to, I need this at the moment. All right, yes, lovely, no problem. That afternoon, hi, it's me again. Where's your other twin? I told you this morning she's next door. Oh yes. The next morning, can you even believe it? Hi, where's your other twin? Let me tell you, the mum leapt off the bed, kind of pinned her up against the wall. I don't blame her really, because that is absolutely unforgivable. Another example, one of the amazing healthcares, which actually we couldn't run our service without them, went in with some tea and toast to one family, had no idea that family's baby had passed away, and she put the tea and toast down as normal and said, oh, can I have a look at your baby? And the mum said, absolutely. She was thrilled that somebody was that interested. The healthcare went to the cot, realised the baby had died, burst into tears and ran out the room. That mum said, oh my God, I'm so sorry, was she okay? And I was just thinking, what planet is a bereaved mother holding it with a newborn baby in a position where she's asking if somebody else is okay? Shocking. So when we talked about it, they said, is there any way of just putting something out there that says what's going on behind this room that everybody would know? But again, we don't want a teardrop. We don't want other mums to be sad. We don't want to think that our experience has made other people sad, which blew me away. So we came up with the idea of a butterfly, and my best friend's a graphic designer, so he designed the little baby in the wing, and awesome. And then we kind of developed it further on. So people in the trust that I've worked in attend my rainbow, or was mine, have a little butterfly sticker as well that says I've had a previous loss. So Keepsake, this was a really big thing for me because there was so little. In fact, the service we had when I joined had nothing. So these little memory bears are actually made from the baby's clothes. So every single bear is as individual as that baby was. Mums, dads, grandmas that pick the clothes that they want to bring and then made into a memory bear. We do and have always done the casting. This is something that we started, a while back now. That little one in the middle, 20 weeks. I've cast babies at any age. And then obviously we've got little big feet over there in the corner. So we can cast any age and it does not hurt them. It doesn't affect the skin. And actually when we first started doing them, we just gave them in a little pot. And then they kind of, got broke. Then we started framing them. And then actually one mum said to me, I just wish I could get my hands on them. So now we do both. So they get a set that's separate and a set that's framed so that actually they can hold their baby's hand. They can touch it, they can feel it. And it's just huge for them. I have never shared this before publicly, but I'm absolutely going to share it today. So when I went to my first trust, I was absolutely heartbroken. I went to the midwife and said, so how do we move our babies? When we get into the mortuary, what happens? And they said, I'm going now. You can follow me if you like. So I was like, okay, brilliant. So I was taken to the sluice and we went to the fridge and she presented me with a parcel and I had no idea what this was. I was just thinking, a bit confused, maybe a blonde moment, I don't know. And I was like, so what's that? And they were like, the baby. What? The baby was wrapped in bubble wrap, in a bag, and then they put it into like a hold all. And then they walked around the corridor with the bag, and we went to the mortuary. I nearly vomited in the box. I'd purposefully forgotten to pick up some paperwork that was needed. So the midwife ran back to the ward for it, and I said to the mortician, what the actual F-bomb, but my 5-year-old sat at the back, is going on here? Is this something you've asked for? And he said, no, it's you sick that do this. And he proceeded to unwrap it. This beautiful little boy, scooped him up, laid him in a Moses basket, and I was like, so hang on a minute, midwifery, we wrap them like that, and then you unwrap them and lay them in a beautiful Moses basket, is that right? And he went, yes, because if this was my child, I would never let you do that. And I went, I wouldn't let you wrap my dog up. So I marched back to my matron's desk, sat on the desk, burst into tears and said, do you know what's going on? And she had no clue. And I literally rang my favourite person in the world about this and said, help me, what do I do? Chris was very helpful. Needless to say, I emailed and for Lewis bought me the most beautiful pram, and we now transfer our babies to the mortuary in a pram. I don't mean clapping for that at all. And actually, the staff were horrified when I asked the parents if they wanted to walk their own babies. We can't possibly do that. I said, we can do anything they want to do. This is their baby. I've had some mums that walk with me or push the pram, and they were literally like, I never thought we'd get to do this. Me too. Me too. So much trouble. Literally, they are blown away because they never knew that. And actually, why wouldn't they want to do that? I do apologise to the babies a lot because I do sing a really crappy version of Twinkle Twinkle. I certainly can't sing at all. But again, so this was just the beginning. I then started, we didn't have a cold cot, we just had the cuddle blankets, which are actually rubbish, but awesome. But we need choice, so we've got everything. We have aching arms bears. Bear in mind, I literally am sort of the craziest person. All this stuff gets delivered to my house now. I prep them and take them to all our hospitals. Lexi dolls for siblings. I've had the most amazing pictures from siblings who've lost their big brothers or their babies, and they love their Lexi dolls so much. Initially, in fact, I took a photo once, David. Did Chris ever show you? Oh my God. I was like, look at this, it's David and this little doll. It looks like his twin. Brilliant. In fact, it's there, look, it's there. I used to pick dolls that matched the babies, you know, like the child. So I'd pick like a blonde-haired little girl for another one. And I thought, well, actually, that's personal choice. So I used to then bring the box out, and there's every colour. There's boys, there's girls, there's all sorts, so they can pick. And they always like that baby. That's their favourite one. David, you're the favourite. So, you know, that's not the case. Sorry, I totally lost it now, haven't I? And then when we were doing memory making, we were taking the babies, or they were taking babies into the sluice, which I had a real issue with, because I wouldn't take a live baby into the sluice. So why would I take a baby that wasn't alive in there? So I couldn't quite get my head around how I was going to do this. And also memory making was done outside as opposed to with the parents. It was like, surprise, here's an amazing set of feet. But actually, they could have done it themselves, or they could have been part of it. So I had this thought that if I got like a changing table type thing, we could move it in, and it was perfect. And there's a little bath under it. Do you know what? Myself and one of my students, because I absolutely love students, and they have to learn from the get-go. I think once you're qualified, it's far too late. You've got to learn from the get-go. So I'm like, any students in the building today, they want to come and work with me. We spent about 4 hours with a family, and do you know what? There was laughter, there was tears, there was so much joy. But the family were like, we want to be kind of involved. We want to watch you do the memories and do the footprints and the casting, but we don't really want to be involved. That lasted 30 seconds. The minute they were in there, they were like, yeah, let me do it. Dad was laughing because we dribbled that, that it's like a gum stuff that you use for your teeth to mould the feet. Well, it dribbled all down his arms and he was quite hairy. So the mum was like, oh, I'll give you some free waxing. So, it was, and they said to me at the end of it, what was the most powerful thing was, we have had the most amazing time. We have had happy memories when actually we just thought this would be the saddest time ever. But actually we've laughed, we've cried, we've played with it. It's almost like going to preschool and doing all those things that we never thought we'd get to do. And then they bathed her and dressed her, and it was just beautiful. So having that option, giving them that choice, not just to have some wonderful things made for you, but to get involved, to do those things themselves, amazing. And that's just me and Chris in a little cuddle with B, which I just love that. So this is one of our study days that Steph kind of kindly came and did at my trust. And we had we had nurses, neonatal nurses and gynae nurses and everything, because in our trust, gynae was completely different. They did nothing. Absolutely nothing. So now what we do in maternity, we do in gynae. What we do in gynae and maternity, we do in paediatrics and neonatal. And actually they've now started doing it in children's, because this is for everyone. So it's all hands-on, getting in there. And I just think moments and memories, that is all these families have. So they should be included in their choices. They should have every choice possible. I had one midwife once that said, we're not doing the casts because it's a nicety, not a necessity. Now, I really liked my job, so I counted to 10 before I ripped her head off. And I just said, what about this is nice? What about this is nice? Their baby died, your child died, or your grandchild died. How would you feel? Would it be nicety to you then? And I said, if you've not got time, then I will do this anyway. And she just sort of looked at me a little shell-shocked. And I went, we provide one-to-one care in this trust. We've got time. And actually, if we haven't, we make time because this family need this. Not nice at all. It's absolute necessity. So, leads me on to what my biggest challenges are. Midwives, not going to lie. Midwives are hard work. In fact, every day I have cried over midwives because their attitudes and behaviours are not great. They don't like to be out of the comfort zone. I'm sick of hearing, we don't do that here. We don't do that here. This is not the way we do it. That is the most dangerous words I've ever heard in the NHS. It is time to change. And actually, the biggest restraint really is time. I've got 5 minutes, so I'm going to whiz through. I put this infinity in because actually grief and baby loss is infinite. They don't wake up one morning and say, I'll have a day off from this shit today. They wake up every day missing their child, every birthday, every Christmas, every minute of every day, even on the boring days and chucking it down with rain and they can't do anything. That person, that baby is missing from their life. There's no break. So then I'm going to literally whistle through. For me, next pregnancy is actually terrifying. Emily, you're rainbow, aren't you? She's my rainbow. And actually, I am a midwife and I'm qualified and I know exactly what's going on. And I went to my scan with her and I laid on that couch for the scan and I shook so hard that the sonographer said to me, if you don't keep still, I won't be able to do this. Right, okay. And my husband kept saying things like, well, you don't smoke, you don't drink, you're fit, you're not that fat. Thanks, love. But it didn't make any difference, did it? Because this just doesn't happen to people that are unfit or fat or smoke or drink. This happens to anyone. So actually, this was the first sort of boulder for me, really, that knocked me off my feet, thinking, actually, being pregnant again is terrifying. So how must the mums feel? How must the families feel? Because if I feel like this and I know exactly what's going on, everyone else must be terrified. And I really love this quote. The hardest thing I ever did was carry another child and face the possibility of loss again. Such risk, such potential pain for the hope of a glorious view. And that's what these families have, is hope. And actually that hope is tested to its limits. I'm not going to read all of this, but I love Alex. I'm so gutted he's not here because literally I'm like sort of a groupie. I just think he's the most amazing person because of what he does. And I have been to his rainbow clinic as an actual midwife with one of my families, and he didn't know who I was, but he sat there and he said he knew all about their daughter. He called her by name. He spoke through it with them, what had happened to them. And I was just there with like cartoon love hearts coming out of my eyes because I just was in awe. And actually, when I went away, I thought, actually, I can't provide that service that he provides because I'm not that sort of clinician and my trust is tiny. We will never be able to do that. But I can run a rainbow clinic to provide extra support for families. So that's what I set up. And this was our very first rainbow baby. And this is what her mum had to say about the service. I'm not going to read it out, so if you've not read it, tough. I just had to put some of these pictures up because these are all rainbow babies. There's 2 spaces here because there's 2 missing. Anyway, and I really put these babies up because I want every single one of these has got an older brother or sister that's not in the world, and that's just a couple. So this is Sammy, and he lost his big brother Joey to Group B strep at 23 days old. This is Bonnie, who lost 2 older siblings, one at 20 weeks and one at 22 weeks because her mum had an incompetent cervix. This little guy lost his big brother when he was 6.5 months old to an undiagnosed diaphragmatic hernia. And when they had the post-mortem, the coroner said, we don't know how this child survived birth, let alone lived for 6 months. He's a miracle. This little one's a big sister was stillborn at full term, as was this little one, but they're my favourite babies that, you know, you kind of get that bond, so they're all on there because they're really special. Chris. This little one also lost a big sister to stillbirth, but that was an intrapartum stillbirth, and again, for me, absolute heartbreak. And the littlest one on the end with the huge dummy in his mouth is Arlo, and he also was his big brother died bout of an intrapartum stillbirth, and I still look after this mum even today because she just is so distraught by what happened to her. But I think these are happy pictures, but they're also super sad pictures because on there are 6 beautiful babies, but there's 7 people missing. Does that make sense? So it's happy and tragic, which is what rainbow pregnancy is. We started putting rainbow bundles together to give once they'd had their babies. Tommy's was really nice and said, I don't know where they nicked the photo from, but it was ace because they chopped my head off. I know I'm not that good to look at, but I was like, hang on. And then the Nursing Times did the same thing, and I started to get a bit of a complex about why people keep chopping my head off. This is kind of the state of my house. Actually, that's my mum in the stripes next to me, I think you can tell. And Judy. Judy lost her eldest baby 60 odd years ago to stillbirth, and she was put on a 10-bedded ward with everybody else's babies, and the midwives told her off for helping the other mums because she didn't have anything to do, and they wouldn't tell her whether it was a boy or a girl. They didn't let her see him or her, and they whisked that baby away. I didn't know that, but Judy crocheted every single blanket. She must be on about 200 blankets by now. And when she came to tell me the story, I literally just cried because she said every time I knit one of these blankets, I knit it for my baby. And actually I've decided she's a little girl and she'd named her because actually how could she go a whole life going baby? She doesn't know where she's buried. She's never seen her. And she said it really keeps her into connection with her baby, which is heartbreaking for me. Randomly put the Butterfly Awards on. Actually, I have had 3 nominations, but still never won anything. But, you know, ain't about that. I am not bitter. Not bitter at all. And then I just wanted to mention HSIB. So this is my last slide, so I'm doing all right, I feel. And you mentioned each baby counts criteria before. Now, I did sort of, I was a bit to and fro with how I was going to say why I've changed jobs. And actually, I'm honest clearly about absolutely everything. And I got to a point with my role where I actually felt, I might cry now, that I had broken my own soul. And it wasn't the families. It was the staff, it was the NHS, it was the lack of resources, it was the fighting constantly to get them what they deserved. And when you are on your own doing that, it's very, very difficult. And I decided that actually, as much as I love this, if I can make the service safer, then hopefully this can be avoided too. So although I've taken a slight step back from bereavement care, I'm hoping that in the long run, safety recommendations will make the service safer for all of us. So we mentioned each baby counts criteria. So at the minute I am a maternity investigator, and actually I still get to support bereaved families. I get to investigate what happened, and we investigate the each baby counts criteria. So that's any intrapartum stillbirth, early neonatal deaths, babies that are cooled, therapeutically cooled, and that also does include maternal death, but not suicide. And actually, I just felt like I wanted to add this to the end of it because people are terrified of HSIB, or they're terrified of investigations, because NHS investigations, historically and probably still ongoing, are brutal. It's your fault. You did this last Tuesday, you forgot to do this, it's your fault that baby died, or that family, this happened. That's never the truth. That is never what happens. It is a bigger picture. It's always a catalogue of things that have gone wrong. And actually, if our guidelines and our support network for staff was stronger and more robust, then we would be safer and maternity would be safer. So if you are investigated by HSIB, it's not a point the finger, it's not about you. It is about what is the bigger picture, what happened, what was going on. All those things that we don't write in the notes are the things that we want to know. And I have interviewed midwives and doctors and consultants that have actually they've come in, they've cried, they've been so nervous about what's been going on, but actually they've left with absolute positivity, because I'm not pointing the finger at them. I am trying to figure out how to make our services safer. And in making our service safer, hopefully the unavoidable deaths will be reduced. That's it.